Very few coaches in history have a resume that rivals that of legendary Hall of Famer Willie Jeffries. He was the first black football coach at a Division I predominantly white college, and for years he was the winningest coach in South Carolina State University football history. His life is an example of what it means to play offense and defense well, because the more he achieved, the more he had an opportunity to give coaches a chance to call plays when they otherwise couldn't. For Coach Jeffries, it was never about the X's and O's. His greatest play to date was a win and a seat at the table for every player whose life he touched. When you look behind you and you see Willie E. Jeffries Field, what do you think?
Oh, it's a great feeling to have coached here.
What does it mean to you to be the winningest coach in South Carolina State University history?
It meant a lot to me over the years that I was the winningest coach, but then for Buddy to pass it, it's still a great feeling. I feel like they're all mine anyway.
You know a lot about winning. What can you teach us about losing?
Win and not brag, and lose without excuses. So what I've learned about that is to congratulate the winner, and you learn. You really win by losing a game.
Let's talk about the history of being the first African American football coach at a predominantly white Division I school when you were at Wichita State.
I knew that Wichita State was genuine in what they wanted to do because I was the third guy they contacted to take that job. When they contacted me, I thought about it and I said, we keep talking about this glass ceiling, but yet it's being offered and the glass ceiling is still there for African American coaches at a Division I school. I said, someone has to take it. If I were unsuccessful, they would say black coaches can't handle this level of football. But we needed to remove the glass ceiling, and I took the job, and I'm so happy that I did. It was a great experience.
Even today, though, Coach, it's still less than 10% of Division I coaches across all the sports are African American. Why do you think more hasn't changed since you were at Wichita State?
I tell our graduates to be ready when opportunity knocks. It only knocks once and it never has picked a lock. People don't know they are looking for good young black coaches, but they must travel this route, I'm telling you, because there's a pool of coaches. In order to get into that pool so you can get selected, you must have gone through and have been a graduate assistant. I didn't plan to go into coaching. My degree is a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering. I wanted to bring a copy of my scholarship for football. $264 first semester, $266 second semester, $500 per year to go to school. And I needed it because we were poor. I mean, we had to put Kool-Aid on layaway. You know, I told you about that once before. I mean, we really didn't have, my dad died when I was 4. Mama never remarried, so we had it hard.
What do you know about coaching today that you didn't know on your first day on the job?
I was thinking about some of the things we used to do offensively, defensively, and how I thought I knew everything, and I didn't. I hired coaches that knew as much or more than I did, so that that could bring something to the table. And when they were successful, I highlighted that and they worked harder. And I always promoted from within. We never went out to find another coach. If one left, we'd hire one from the staff.
Who's your favorite coach?
Oh, I liked Eddie Robinson and Jake Gaither and Bobby Bowden. I loved Danny Ford, and they're just a group of those guys. And Buddy has done such a tremendous job on an anemic budget, but we all gather around and we help him. I'm most proud of the game when we defeated Delaware State in 1973 for our first MEAC championship.
As I sit here and try to do the math, you're 85 now?
85.
85 years old. Mind like a steel trap.
Well, my mind is good, and my first wife is 80. She's 82 years old, and we're both healthy, and God has blessed us 3 children and 6 grandchildren. I want it to be said that I left the world and our community, state of South Carolina, a much better place than when I found it.
Coach Jeffries, thanks for having a seat at our table today.
Thank you so much, and I've been watching it. I wanted a seat at this table. Thank you so very much.
The life of James Jim Felder has been defined by service. He served with the Army's Honor Guard Ceremonial Unit in Washington, D.C. He served as a pallbearer for assassinated civil rights leader Medgar Evers. He also served as the leader of the casket team for President John F. Kennedy. His selection to serve with the prestigious Honor Guard represented only the 10th Black American to be a part of this unit. And this would not be the last time Felder would be one of the first. From Arlington Cemetery to the South Carolina State House, this civil rights legend has dedicated his life to breaking racial barriers and making sure all people have a seat at the table.
1968, in South Carolina, you're going to see Negroes participating, running for offices as they've never done before.
I ran the voter education project for 2 years. We registered over 200,000 black voters in that period of time. And then I got drafted by Ms. Simpkins and others to run for the legislature. It wasn't a job I sought. They drafted me, they drafted I.S. Stevie Johnson also, said, you boys we're gonna run y'all. I said, okay, I don't have any money. I said, I don't have it, so we'll raise the money for you. And they did. They raised the money for I.S. Stevie Johnson and I to run, and we won.
So what was it like working in the State House at that time?
It was like we were furniture in the room. They just ignored us completely. Just for the first 2 weeks. For the first 2 weeks, they wouldn't speak to us or brush past you, just ignored you. Now, except for the Columbia legislators, Isidore Lewis, Alex Anderson, our local guys who helped us get elected. After 2 weeks, one of them would slide up beside your desk. Jim, can I get you to sign on as a sponsor on this bill? And after that, it opened up. Yeah, we were speaking, talking, having drinks after work and all of that.
Do you think we're more divisive now than when you were in legislature?
Yes. What happened in South Carolina, like in some other states, the parties became more divergent. They failed to cooperate with each other like they used to do. They became red and blue. Became party loyalists over people and over their districts and what have you. And that has continued, but that has been going on now for the last 25, 30 years. But prior to that, there was real camaraderie.
You went to visit the State House with your class, but could not go inside because Black people weren't allowed inside the State House. Correct. Fast forward a couple of years later, and you are one of the first Black men elected to the South Carolina legislature after Reconstruction. What a full circle moment. I know that had to hold a lot of weight for you.
Well, it did. First of all, it didn't bother me initially because I was happy to be there, But then when people would call or come by the house or come by the office, and when they talk about how proud they were, then it began to settle in. And I said, well, I got to do a good job if I'm in the public eye here. But again, it still comes back to Sumter and the leadership that was here. I can't overstate that. I had great mentors who were civil rights fighters all of their lives here from Sumter. And so I had no choice but to get involved. My civil rights situation started across the street over here at Mount Pisgah AME Church, 1953. I'm 14 years old, Jim Cliburn is 13 years old, and we joined the NAACP Youth Council. I was able to help more people in that job than any of the other things that I've done.
Did you feel pressure stepping into that role?
I did because the black community said, oh, you're gonna have to send us to jail. And that ain't right. Why you took that job? But after I was in it for a while, more people started coming to the courtroom just to observe than ever before. They want to say, who is this black guy in the courtroom? But it worked out. After a while, they realized that I was going to be fair, and fair to the law and fair to them also.
What would you like our generation to understand?
I'd like for them to learn our history. When I came home to do the voter education project in 1967, we only had 8 black elected officials at that point and 50,000 registered voters. Today we've got over 1 million registered voters in South Carolina. We've got 928 black elected officials in South Carolina. Our problem today is turnout, getting us out to vote. We could change things, but we got to concentrate on votes. We're only turning out 53, 54, 55%. And that's not just in the black community, that's the white community also.
We want to hear about James Felder as a husband and a dad.
Married my high school sweetheart. We met here at Lincoln in 1953. She's a librarian. She finished Bennett College in Greensboro. And she went to Bennett because I suggested to her mother to send her to Bennett so that she wouldn't have to deal with the boys, all right? And her mother did that. She hated it here.
Oh, goodness.
And I went to Atlanta where all the girls.
Mr. Felder!
I did that. Have 2 children, Adrian and Jimmy. Jimmy is in the military also. 3 generations of the military in my family. My dad was World War II. I'm Vietnam era, and Jimmy was the Afghan in that era. My daughter, she's a Clemson graduate, and she's an engineer. And I have 2 grandboys.
What do you think is your greatest accomplishment?
Well, I'd like to say this museum is yet. Yeah, I've been on the edge of history, and I had a front row seat in a lot of historical things. I'm on my 5th book now, trying to preserve our history and the people who made that history.